There was never going to be a better way to launch the Daz Talks Hawks channel. So welcome, guys, to the 2025 Draft Dissection, where I'm going to answer two key questions about all of the Hawks draftees. Why him? And what kind of impact can we expect in 2026, which is going to be hard to answer a little bit because we didn't have a debutant last year. Noah Mraz and Cody Anderson did not play. Mraz obviously going to be a long-term key defensive back prospects from the Dandenong Stingrays, and Cody Anderson taken as a pick in the 60s. The Beast from the East, nicknamed, but didn't get on the park. Showed some signs at Box Hill, but couldn't crack into the midfield, obviously. Now, if you reacted or saw my video on Daz Talks Footy about Cal Toomey's Road to the Draft article, you'll know that the Hawks basically had three names on their mind going into draft night, that being Sam Grill, Jacob Farrow, and weirdly enough, Latrell Pickett, given our forward of centre strengths. But that obviously did not come to fruition. We had a secondary group of players, so it deemed worthy of a trade down. The Hawks have ended up with these picks in next year's draft. They obviously have still got their first 3 seconds, which includes our own, no third, and a fourth. We obviously did some on-trading with the pick we got in the Jai Sarong deal as well, but the Hawks have got a pretty good draft hand for next season. The hate watch on the Saints is going to be a real thing as they attempt to climb up the ladder. But let's not talk about the kids we didn't get. Let's talk about the ones that we did and kickstart with the first of 3 Central Districts boys, that being Cameron Nan, who is a utilitarian type of player. He ended his season at Central Districts as a midfielder, averaging 28 disposals in his last 3 games. But for South Australia, he worked his way up to a wing a little bit, and a lot like Matthew Jefferson, where he got a lot of love for kicking 7 goals in a carnival game. Didn't have a massive carnival outside of that, only averaged the 10 disposals in his 4 games. But his footy IQ, and as I said before, the utilitarian approach that Hawthorn clearly want to have. You think of Josh Weddle, I've talked about this a lot, but Weddle being an All-Australian fullback in his draft year, he has not been a fullback for the Hawks at all, a taller, athletic, freakish type player. I'm not saying Cam is Josh Weddle reincarnated, by the way, but he doesn't necessarily need to be that 188-centimetre forward type that he was for South Australia. He also doesn't need to be the midfielder that he was for Central Districts to finish the season. He's got a lot of strings to his bow, and the Hawks figuring out where his best position is going to be key. Now, granted, I'm not suggesting that he needs to play all over the field. Josh Weddle was still established as a defender before he became that pseudo second ruck, and then as we saw last season, that wingman and even guy that could swing forward. He still needs to narrow down a position. And up until the selection of Matty Leray, and I'll talk more about him a little bit later on, I would have said wing. Absolutely. His ability to get up and down the ground, his disposal efficiency at Central Districts was off the chain. That would have made a whole lot more sense. Although, the Hawks, if they do go down with some injuries, Mitch Lewis is pretty temperamental up forward. Cal Shadir got injured last year. And Jack Gunston's, of course, getting a little bit older, and it's pretty hard to expect that he is going to have the same kind of impact that he had in the 25 season. Nan could find a home as a spot up forward. However, I think it's relatively unlikely that we're going to see him early in the year. Injuries are going to be dependent as well as Box Hill form, but I think he's going to add, hopefully, some versatility to his game at Box Hill, but I hope, my fingers are crossed, that he is going to be able to narrow down a position at Box Hill and not just be thrown all around the place. Moving forward, though, I can absolutely see him being an ultra-damaging forward of centre player, whether that is that attacking winger, whether it is the kind of striker in the midfield, or whether it is as a lead-up forward. A little bit of an unknown prospect, but plenty of silky skills he brings. So that is Cameron Nan done, and let's move on to the man who is the best in his position that slipped to a pretty famous Hawthorn number, that being pick 23. So Aiden Schubert slipping to pick 23 made no sense to me at the time. I'm really glad that the Hawks eventually picked him up. It looked like it was going to be between him and Harley Barker. I am a big Harley Barker fan, but considering Nan can play on a wing and we ended up getting Matty Leray, who was Barker's South Australian twin in the carnival, I think it worked out reasonably well. Schubert's goal-kicking action is going to cause a lot of headaches for those that are more traditionalists. From a goal-kicking standpoint, he is still a really accurate kick and goal, and it's kind of funky, a little bit James Manson-like, who was an old Collingwood ruckman in the 90s, who had a really awkward kicking style as well. But Schubert is the best key forward in this draft. He's got mobility, But strangely enough, at Central Districts last year in the under-18s, he averaged nearly 20 disposals a game as a key forward. Granted, some of those were around the ruck as well. I'm not denying that for a moment, but considering we've got Mabior Chol on the list as that forward/second ruck type, I don't suspect that we are going to see Aiden in a ruck role for the first 3 or 4 seasons of his career. Now, at the time of recording, he's still 17 years of age. He is draft eligible because he turns 18 before the end of the year, but this guy is still raw. We delisted Jasper Scaife last year. I've already spoken about the key forwards that are on the list already. So it's clear that Schubert is going to be a Box Hill player for the foreseeable future. The Hawks played with just Gunston and Chol on occasion. The Hawks did play with all 4 of them on occasion. So it's fair to say that being 5th on the depth chart is going to be where Schubert stays, and hopefully he can rack them up at Box Hill. We did also invite 28-year-old Brodie McLaughlin from the Gold Coast Suns, who was the leading goal kicker in the VFL last year, as a train-on tall forward as well, which is a little bit different. We'll see how it goes, see if he can be a little bit of an impact player for us at any stage. But again, he's just going to be as part of the SPP program, so we'll see how that goes. He's not guaranteed a list spot. Schubert already is. But his overhead marking and his athletic prowess should excite Hawks fans moving forward. But if you believe that the Hawks premiership window is open for the next 2 or 3 seasons, I suspect that Schubert probably won't be making the highest impact in that time. However, in half a decade from now, when he's 22, 23 years old, and you'd think Gunston, Chol are not there, Mitch Lewis will be 32, that is when Schubert should be able to shine. I've got no qualm against the Hawks taking the best key position player in the draft as late as they did. Richmond did it with Harry Armstrong. Now, granted, they also did take Jonty Fall at pick 14 in that draft last year, but no other key forward, Mitch Marsh being 191 centimetres, I would deem him more as a hybrid forward unless he grows a little bit more. But the first standout tall forward in the draft ended up going to the Hawks. I just don't see how at this point, without seeing him play in an AFL environment, we can be against picking the best player in his position at 23. And I wish him the best. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. It just won't be for a while, and that's okay. The Hawks, through their wheeling and dealing, landed Jack Dalton at pick 34. And if it wasn't for breaking both of his wrists in a gym accident, Dalton could have gone a lot higher in this draft. Now, granted, Dalton wasn't in my top 40 in my latest mock draft on Daz Talks Footy. I had him very close to that 40 mark, but this was a little bit earlier than I suspected. Now, granted, it wasn't anything to do with his on-field performance. Averaging 28 disposals and 6 tackles is going to be nothing to laugh at, but it's going to be about where Dalton fits into this Hawthorn midfield moving forward. Likened to Zach Merritt, which every Hawthorn fan will enjoy after the trade did not go through, obviously, for the Essendon now former captain. But Dalton, I think, has the best chance of any of the Hawthorn draftees to make a debut early. Granted, he is a lot like Josh Ward from a profiling standpoint, although he is a better tackler than Josh was in his draft year. I just think that his use of pace, granted he won the 2-kilometre time trial beating Josh Weddle, which is no easy feat, by the way, his ability to cover the ground and make good decisions by foot over a 20 to 40 metre distance is really going to appeal to Mitchell in a big way. Dalton loves a 1-2 handball as well, which the Hawks like to do, and given the acceleration that the Hawks want to have in their ball movement, he fits the system brilliantly. And I really like what he might be able to do. Granted, again, it's going to be really hard to say that he would be an early debutant considering the Hawks just don't do that. And if Will Day is fully fit, we obviously expect that he and Newcomb are going to be 1 and 2 in that midfield. Connor Nash and Josh Ward would be your next 2 up. The Hawks apparently are going to be training Connor McDonald with the midfielders all preseason. You've still got Cam McKenzie on the sideline as well. Dylan Moore and Nick Watson got CBAs later in the season. It's just going to be hard to say that Dalton is going to be a CBA player in 26 and beyond. But again, given his traits, could we see a spot open up on the wing or as a high half forward to replace Connor McDonald and rotate with a Sam Butler type? It's not out of the realm of possibility. And if a guy, like I've been saying, like Nick Martin for the Bombers, a good user forward of center that can hit the scoreboard, maybe the Hawks could do the same with Dalton. But what really impresses me and what really gives him an edge over some other debutants that might be able to find the footy is that tackle number. 28 and 6 is nuts. Now, I was extremely high on Matty Leray towards the back end of the season. I actually had him mocked inside the top 30 if the Pies wanted to trade up for him. Obviously, that didn't happen. 56 is pretty bonkers. Again, he was alongside Harley Barker for the undefeated South Australian team last year in the Carnival and did nothing to disgrace himself. And as you can see here, the third of the Central Districts boys alongside, of course, Aiden Schubert and Cam Nairn. Loray's disposal efficiency is going to stand out to a lot of Hawks fans who have been frustrated at times with guys like Harry Morrison and Chanquoth Giat's ball use. Morrison, of course, still being here, and CJ has gone off to the Ds to add some much-needed run and burst on their outside as Harvey Langford becomes more of a CBA prospect for them moving forward. But outside of his ability to find the ball, his marks, tackles, clearances, inside and rebounding 50 numbers suggest that we've got a really good outside player on our hands. One of the biggest problems that the Hawks had last year was their wingers in forward 50, or for us, it would have been defensive 50 stoppages, letting players go out the back. Isaac Rankin had a horrible one later in the year on Harry Morrison, and then had another one, I think it was, on Dylan Moore in that game. And Matty Loray's positioning as a winger looks really solid, and one of the reasons why I liked him so much when not only studying his film later on, but watching him live, granted not at the ground, but watching him live through the ability to stream. Unfortunately, with work and family life, not a whole lot of time to fly to South Australia just after having a baby, to be honest with you, but I digress. I do like Loray's chances of getting early games, again, outside of the fact that the Hawks have already got depth. But one of the things that the Hawks clearly wanted out of this draft class were either guys that can play multiple roles or guys that have a great ability to play a specific role. We didn't need inside midfielders. We didn't draft one. We didn't need key defenders. We didn't draft one. And even though Grill and Jacob Farrow would have been really good outside players, they didn't end up with us. But Dalton can be an outside player. Nairn on a wing or as a high half forward, as a taller high half forward, can be an outside player. Matty Loray can be an outside player. And I think for what Sam Mitchell's system is clearly identifying itself as positionally at 56, the Hawks have made a really good decision with Loray. So, granted, I said we didn't draft an inside midfielder. Well, not in the national draft, but we did in the rookie draft. So let's talk about Ollie. Now, if you watched any of my draft stuff, I was an Ollie Greaves guy. Now, yes, I did understand that he had some deficiencies in his game, and we will talk about that. But he was generally, alongside Noah Hibbins-Hargreaves, the biggest shock in not being drafted on either of the national draft days. Averaging 26 disposals, 6 marks, and a goal a game would be an absolutely elite under-18s resume. But as you can probably see on the screen there, 2 tackles from an inside midfielder is not great. And granted, his defensive running and his speed, 2 things that every single club wants from their players. You look at a club like Richmond, who really did prioritise speed in their draft. Ollie clearly was looked at by a lot of clubs for what he couldn't do, or what he wasn't doing, over what he was. Now, at his peak, of course, 35-4 in an under-18s preliminary final should absolutely get the tail wagging, but it is going to take some work to get him AFL ready. There's nothing wrong with that. If Connor Nash is going to be a long-term player in this squad, and what I mean by that is in 3 or 4 years from now, if he is still there, Ollie would be able to go through there. Could Ollie, as a more well-rounded prospect, help Will Day not be as much of a CBA player? Absolutely. And one of the advantages that he's got, even though the sub rule is gone, is that if he's able to be a CBA player and a threat inside 50, because we've seen Jai Newcomb be it before, albeit not a lot, but we've been able to see it from time to time, having that flexibility on field and adding that to his arsenal at AFL standard means this would be an absolute steal. But I can't imagine that he would be getting a lot of game time early. I suggest his Box Hill numbers are going to be more than solid. Him and Henry Huswaite, and maybe even potentially Cam McKenzie, as an opening CBA crew would be enormous. And when guys like Ethan Stanley, who's also getting a run on Hawthorn's list as an SPP trial player, would also be around that mark as well, Greaves could still rest forward in that way. But what I'm going to be really interested in watching Ollie early on in the year is, what are the tackle numbers like? What are the defensive numbers looking like? How much of his heat map is going to be spent inside the defensive 50, because I believe that Jai Newcomb last year was at around 46% defensive half. I don't know what Connors is off the top of my head. Currently, my Wi-Fi is down, so I have no means of researching that at the moment, but if I do it in editing, it'll be somewhere around here. And if Ollie's is nowhere near that, it's going to be hard to justify having a CBA guy if other teams win the centre clearance, remembering that we lost them by 15 to Geelong in the prelim, not working back to help out that defensive unit, because it's a non-negotiable in modern footy. But overall, I can't say there's a pick here that I don't like or that I feel a lot of pessimism around. So in all honesty, until we see it on field, I give it a massive tick. But if I had to put some money on which one he's going to play first, I think it's Jack Dalton. How many of them would I like to see? Is it strange if I say none? Because it means that we're healthy, and if we're healthy, we're probably thriving. But I do hope we see Dalton, and I would really like to see Matty Leray as well, because I'm really interested to see how his under-18s and carnival talents are going to be brought forward into an AFL system. But that, guys, is the opening Daz Talks Hawks video. And coming into the preseason, there is going to be current film breakdowns. There is going to be player speculation. There's going to be a lot of Hawthorn-based content coming. So fingers crossed you enjoy. Like the video if you like the video. Subscribe, not only here, but if this is the first time you've ever watched me, I also run Daz Talks Footy. So go and join that family there if you're interested in my thoughts beyond the Hawks. Have yourselves a fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next video.